or do I have to dub that in from another show?
Welcome to another fantastic episode of Command Control Power. Thank you all for listening. And we have a special focus today on how to leverage Addigy to run more of your business practice, specifically to kind of reproduce some of the features from Watchman monitoring. So Jerry had brought up this topic, and I think we can dive right in. It's not going to be all Addigy, but certainly if you are an Addigy company, if you use Addigy, you will get a lot from this episode. But we'll definitely plan to sprinkle some more info in throughout that. But Jerry, where do you want to get us started on this topic?
I think Sam should find that exciting because he's pretty deep into Jamf these days again, right, Sam?
Well, I still use them both. I actually also talked about Mosel the other day, but that's a whole other conversation.
It's a whole nother show is what that is.
Yeah. But I am curious on your side of things, Jerry, in terms of where specifically what we're about to talk about and how Addigy kind of took the foothold for what you're
researching. Yeah. And initially I'd like some feedback from both of you guys and also any of our live listeners or people who hear this show. And I knew, for a long, like everyone else, I had signed up Watchman early days and been dutifully keeping my subscription going. And it's proved to be very useful in a lot of ways. And Joe probably can point out some of the pros to you. But in terms of price point and what it was delivering on an ongoing basis, I took a hard look at that. And I had been thinking about this for a long time. And I kind of knew using the product that I use for MDM, which is Addigy, that I probably couldn't replicate everything or a lot of the sort of ease of use of seeing just some of those things bubble up to the top that I get with Watchman on an ongoing basis. But I really feel like there hasn't been a lot of development with Watchman monitoring in more recent years, not getting any more specific than that. And so I had a really nice conversation with Tim Pearson, of course, who seems to be, the little angel on one shoulder, sort of whispering in my ear, telling me great things I could be doing. And actually, Tim Pearson still uses Watchman, at least to the point of when this show was broadcast. I know he's still subscribed. So, but I had looked again at the support menu application, which is offered by Route 3 out of the Netherlands. And it's it's what Watchman monitoring calls the contact menu. Mm-hmm. Isn't that what they call it, Joe? Contact menu?
I think so.
That's the name. And so for some people, I think I had a conversation with Joe and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Joe, but you were saying, well, you don't really use it that much, but I have an educational environment where the contact menu is pretty important. And so it was a nice thing to be able to offer. So it had some significance for me, especially in that environment, in one of my larger clients. And they've done some great things with this support application that they call it from Route 3. And we'll put the link in the show notes if you are not familiar with this. But it makes sort of a very nice contact menu, a little bit different from the way Watchman is laid out. And the great thing is it's free, right? So that kind of got me thinking about things. And I said, well, this is free. If I get this deployed, and I did get it deployed through the help. Shout out to Tim Pearson, who gave me help, and also Adam Rice, longtime friend of the show, also was kind enough to send me some messages back and forth. And I'm one of those guys who, I'm not going to figure out that you need to fish and you could make a line in a pole. I need somebody to kind of give me a pole and the line and the bait on the end of the hook. And then I kind of get the idea and then I can sort of make something work. So I guess I'm a good copier. I could copy somebody else's homework and pass the class. And so nice. In both of those cases, that's what I did. So if it weren't for them, I wouldn't have gotten support menu going as quickly as I did anyway. So that was really nice. And then I looked at what I was paying for Watchman and I'm thinking well, what am I getting from Watchman? Well, things that are important to me are drive space. And that's a pretty easy one for my MDM Addigy to deliver, to get pretty quickly. I can get alerts for that. they were delivering for the rare cases where my clients were using Time Machine. I got some Time Machine status. I was getting Backblaze status from Watchmen, but I've ripped the Band-Aid off now at least 2.5, maybe 3 weeks. I forget when we first had that conversation, Joe.
Yeah.
But I am feeling so much more liberated that I'm not getting this recurring bill.
Yeah.
And I don't really feel like, I've gone to hell in a handbasket. So, I mean, I know there's lots of good reasons for people listening to the show to maybe keep it status quo. I had Addigy all tied in with Zendesk. And so, Addigy would generate Zendesk tickets for me. And I kind of can do that with Addigy. Did I say Watchmen would generate the Zendesk?
Yeah, I got what you were saying Addigy, but you meant Watchmen can generate the tickets.
Yeah, Watchmen was doing that. So I'm not getting those Zendesk tickets from Watchmen. So I had the integration, and it was really nice when I saw that, they had a little bit of a roadmap, and there were things that would sort of, little add-on features. And but it just, again, not to trash talk it, because I think it has lots of value, especially to folks listening to us. But I was very happy to sort of move on. And that's my little story.
Fair. Yeah, I mean, that's fair, Jerry. I was curious about this. I purposely didn't ask you too many questions before the show because, I wanted to leave it to live. Apparently you talked to Joe, but fine. I wasn't in that conversation. But I was curious about this because, could I live without it? Probably. I do have some conveniences there with, as you mentioned, the Zendesk tie-in. So that's really nice. Although sometimes I get some bogus alerts that I don't need to deal with. But for the clients that back up via Time Machine, I don't have that many. But for the ones that do, that's a nice one. I do like some of the disk full options and some of the others. But as I think Joe will probably, and you as well, will probably talk about, some of that can be captured by Addigy and similar tools. So what am I leaving behind if I left Watchmen that can't be replicated elsewhere? Right. And I think probably for me, it might be a bit of, I don't want to deal with that right now situation of like, if I take it away, now I got to think of all these things that I got to just make sure they work as well. But it's nice to hear that it hasn't impacted you in a large way.
Yeah, I don't feel like all of a sudden my clients are being neglected. It actually has helped me, and I shared this with Joe offline, that I've gotten a little bit more introspective with using Addigy and trying to extrapolate more information from it. The Backblaze monitoring I get in weekly emails. So again, not speaking for Joe, but he set up a little bit differently where his clients get the emails about their backup status, where most of mine, they get the emails. I get the emails about their backup status. Right. So I am getting that covered through that aspect of Backblaze. So I feel like there's very little out there that's sort of hanging in the breeze that I don't really know what is. I think, I think it's easier for me because I've got a smaller installed base. And I know both of you guys have, a bigger installed base than I do. So that makes it a little bit easier for me to walk on. Yeah. But if you're thinking about it, you may want to think about it, pretty seriously. Yeah. Because it's so nice to not have to pay that monthly fee, and it's a healthy chunk of dough, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anytime you can save an expense, on that order, I mean, it's like picking up a small client, or it's like, it's just I mean, you just look at it as revenue that goes right to your bottom line. So definitely see where you're coming from. And I think I'm along the lines of what Sam was saying, is like, I know I can get from point A to point B, but if I have to take my time to do that, if I have to invest time into kind of like reworking Addigy in certain ways to present the information that I need, that I have from Watchmen, as readily as it's presented in Watchmen, for example, if I have to do some work to do that, I'm going to keep deferring that until I really either, start resenting the money that it's costing me every month, to a significant degree, or or I just free up some time to do that. So for me, it's just, I just keep kicking the can down the road and waiting until it's a better time for me to go through this transition. But I really do think that, on paper, in theory, Addigy should be able to do everything that Watchman does. It already does most of it out of the box. But let's go through, I'll give you the counterpoint here. I'll go through a computer, record on Watchman. So I'm looking at this nice, view that Watchman has showing the recap of all the information, lots of little green check marks, which is always nice to see. And, looking at the things that I actually use here. Well, one of the things I use is the link from Watchman to Addigy. So that's unnecessary right off the top. So that's already a solved problem right there. At a glance, you have some basic machine specs that are very useful, and not a whole lot of other, extraneous info. So you have the serial number, the description of the product, the operating system, the memory, the boot volume capacity, processor info and things like that. This is all reported by Watchman. All of the above you can get in Addigy. It's just that it's on the go live page where you might have to kind of scroll for some of it or Command F to find some of it. So that's one slight difference. In terms of like the actual, what Watchman mainly does, which is alerting to various issues, there's a bunch of things that used to be very useful back in the day, but I don't know the last time I've even thought of, a disk IO error or a false mount or, these things still occasionally happen, but it's really not something I have to intervene about. File vault status, that's in Addigy. That's no problem. And not only that, but you can actually enable it and configure it in Addigy, enroll the client, etc. Which version of Flash is installed? Don't really need to know that anymore. Kernel panics, Addigy can report on that as well. Some things that I think Watchman really does nicely is like the laptop battery, status. So the number of cycles, the max capacity versus the design capacity, the life remaining, whether the status goes to like service now or service recommended or those kinds of issues. I'm sure there's a place where that actually appears in Addigy. I just haven't really looked for it. So part of it is like, okay, I guess I could create a monitoring item for that or figure out where to get that. But do you use that, Sam? Have you found that like useful with your clients with laptops?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually there are ways in a variety of the MDMs to pull that data as well. And sometimes when someone's telling me my computer won't hold a charge or I'm traveling and this is not working, I go right to that cycle count as well as the battery health.
Yep.
And that points it out. It occurs to me though, Joe, like as you're going through this is basically, it's the MDM. It's Watchman is an MDM without the MDM. Like it's just it's just showing us all this stuff, but we can't do anything about it necessarily.
Right.
And I'm not like, I'm still using it. So I'm not saying I'm getting rid of it. I'm not saying it's not useful to me. One of the things that I find in it is like, sometimes MDMs will like not stay steady reporting data, like a computer won't check in anymore or won't communicate with MDM. And it seems like when that happens, regardless of the MDM in question, Watchman is always still there saying, this is when it was last rebooted, this is when it checked in, and I can download a report from there pretty quickly. Yeah. So I kind of like that. Yeah. And then, of course, Roy in the chat brought up something interesting, which is if you manage PCs, what are you using? And there's a big question.
And I do have a response for that. And that was one of the things that I didn't bring up is that I just have a handful of PCs, 6 to be exact, right? So that's
it's a little more than a handful, right? Yeah. So depends on the
hands, but I knew that there was a Watchman client that would just do read only and just give me some basic stuff. And I have from time to time kept in touch with a local PC specialist and just reached out to him. And I said, I just need something really lightweight. And he said, in so many words, that he uses N-able, N-able.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yep.
And he's got lots of seats, and he would create a separate tenancy for me and sell them to me at a really nominal fee.
Oh,
so
I
got the installers. All my PCs are being monitored right now. They've got it's pretty robust, the N-able platform, and they claim that they do Mac as well, but you can do an incredible amount of stuff with PC MDM, at least on Enable. And so that's all I'll say about that. But it's quite robust.
Jerry,
and
I'll bring up another. Go ahead.
Sure. Here. Yeah, no. The only other thing that comes to mind is we all use Hoodoo. I think, Joe, are you using Hoodoo right now?
No.
Okay, you're right, because you're using Repair Shopper. Sam uses Hoodoo. The other nice thing is there was an API built into Hoodoo, so when you would onboard a machine using Watchman, you could bring it right into Hoodoo, and that was nice. And I've lost that. So there's a few trade-offs, but for $200 a month, gang, I'll put in the time to recreate all that stuff, or more, right?
Yeah.
And if I can just chime in, I have a larger PC install base, and I've mentioned that we work with like a sister company that does a lot of PC stuff. We also use Enable with that too. So 2 points for Enable there, if that's what you're looking to do. And it's not just read only. I mean, you can do other, nice fireworks. For all of you that are going to watch us on YouTube, Jerry just let off some fireworks in his background. But
I want to see live real fireworks next time, Jerry. I just want to see it on your desk, and you light the fuse and it just like kind of blows up.
Kind of like a Jimi
room.
Hendrix kind of thing, for
exactly. Yeah. Like real pyrotechnics. Otherwise, it's not worth
mentioning. So well.
Yeah.
Play the computer with my teeth or something like that. All right, you could do that.
So I want to point out another alternative here, as long as we're talking about, a replacement for Watchman. This would be not quite to the level of Enable, but, since we already use Addigy, and Addigy integrates really well with Malwarebytes OneView. Is that what it's called now? OneView, ThreatDown. I'm not sure what the different brands mean, but you brought this up to me, Jerry, that there's actually, you can deploy obviously Malwarebytes to your PCs as well, which maybe they'd benefit from having that if you don't have any other solution there. But that also gives you like similar dashboards to like the status about, when was the machine last restarted? You can even restart it, right from there. Like you can do, it's very lightweight sort of management, more so for just the monitoring of those basic items. And like Sam said, Watchman is sort of like the precursor to MDM. I mean, it's it's one aspect of like remote monitoring and maintenance, right? Was RMM, like that's kind of what the buzzword before MDM and now DDM was like RMM, and monitoring. That's what it is. It's Watchman monitoring. And so, you have that ability to monitor the status, receive an alert about the status, but not do a whole lot more. The contact menu is a nice exception to that, where it's sort of like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like they just added this feature in. It's not really about monitoring or anything like that, but it's a way of representing your brand on the client machine, which I think has a lot of value, and also like training the client to reach you that way. Maybe it submits a ticket to your help desk, or it's an easy way to get to your email, or to launch your remote support tool, as the case may be. As you mentioned about the contact menu, Jerry, you can use Support App, which is a great option, or Addigy also has a similar menu built in. When you use self-service, you can enable the menu bar icon. So that's just another way to kind of get into some very basic features there. I have used the contact menu for launching an app on the client machine where they needed to use our self-service app to run a script for a particular workflow, which thankfully is no longer needed at that client. But there's been very basic uses like that. I used to train my clients to go to the contact menu and launch our SOS, remote support tool. Usually they have to re-download it now anyway, or they just search in Spotlight. So it's, either way, it doesn't really matter. Continuing the list though of the kind of dashboard on the Watchman computer record, we talked about the laptop battery. It's presented really well in Watchman. I'm sure we can get some of the same information from Addigy. Local IP address, malware, let's see, skipping a few things here, network errors, RAM errors. Now you get to root capacity. And like Jerry said, you can set up a monitoring item and even a remediation in Addigy to deal with that. So I think, Jerry, you posted the question on Slack about anybody doing anything interesting for remediating a low disk space issue, because in theory, you can help the person with that. Now you've got an MDM. You're not just relying on monitoring only. What's been your experience there? Because you had some good feedback from that question, but I don't know that you wanted to implement any of what people were suggesting.
Yeah, there was one to purge all the Addigy downloads.
Right.
which potentially could free up space. But in the cases where I've had clients where they're at 5% or 3%, it really hasn't moved the needle at all. But that is what I have in place for remediation on that. We're getting a lot of good feedback, by the way, in the chat from Adam Rice. Adam, I don't know if you were listening earlier, but we shouted you out. I shouted you out earlier, but he was saying that he uses Action 1, which is great for Windows patching. And he says he's got PCs in Synchro as well. So
I didn't know about Action 1 free for less than 100 devices. That's bonkers.
Yeah,
that's cool. I got to check that out.
Well, that actually, I'm reading Adam's message now as well. Action 1 is great for Windows patching.
Yeah.
So it's not just monitoring. That's huge for less than 100 devices. I mean, this is a great way for a Mac, shop like mine to actually help a little bit with Windows too.
Right. You were mentioning reporting with Watchman monitoring, and to be completely honest with you, it's always been this way for me. I've never found the automatic reports that it generated, the PDFs, to be anything you'd want to send to a client. Sure. They were just too big, and I'm trying to think of the right word, but just a little too elementary. So I know, Joe, you've created some little exports that you do, and you bring them into numbers, and you've generated some nice reports for clients. But that being said, of course, you could export from Addigy as a CSV and build your own reporting tools that way.
From there. Adam mentioned he set up a remediation on that disk space issue, Jerry, which runs a DU script, which is basically, I think, I did this at one point too. I forget disk usage, I guess, right? DU. So it it can size a folder and the subfolders and report back. So I made a script at one point in Addigy that sizes the home folder of the current user, I guess, and it reports back the largest folders inside the home folder. So it's okay, maybe look at your desktop. That seems to be pretty big, So you could do that. You could pop up a message on screen that tells the user, hey, you're running low on space. Looks like your desktop is over 100 gig. It's the largest folder. Why don't you take a look at that? Or even go one level deeper or 2 levels deeper, almost like Omni Disk Sweeper, which is what I use on the kind of GUI side to do this, to review and recap for the client. Here's your largest folders that are subfolders of whatever.
Right. The folder marked OnlyFans seems to be a little bit large, and you might want to go through those and purge some of the videos. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. How did you know there were videos in there? Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So
can I just say real quick that in StreamYard, I wanted to thumbs up Adam's comment, and I was I almost put Adam in timeout because that's one of the options in there. Because I went and clicked on the 3 dots and it was I can either put him in timeout or ban the user. I was whoop.
And delete their comments. Don't do that. Yeah.
So Adam, if I ban you by mistake, I apologize. I was trying to give you a
nice. And then you've got smart status reported in Watchman, which is also nice to see, although I mean, I don't even know if in rotational drives, it's pretty rare to have a smart status actually report as failing. There were certain smart, I forget what they call them, but there's various items in the smart status that, you could say if this one gets to be above a certain threshold, then the drive is more likely to fail, even though smart status does not report failing. So for example, soft RAID driver will just, tell you, hey, your disk is 1 to 60 times more likely to fail in the next, 6 months, or it has some comment about this based on their experience. If I see that, I like to replace the drive, but I haven't ever seen one actually fail after that little message pops up. So, and that goes for rotational drives. I don't think that's a major issue with SSDs. So smart status doesn't seem to be that useful anymore. You guys mentioned, time machine status, backblaze status, those can be pretty useful. So what's the counterpoint? Because I said I was going to make the counterpoint to Jerry's argument here, but here I am saying all of this is an Addigy. Well, the counterpoint is my workflow is set up to go to Watchman and quickly see the information. I need to just set up Addigy to report the information in as clear a way, the information that I want to see. And thankfully, Addigy can do that. You can set up a dashboard that has only the, custom facts and device facts that you want to see. If it's a, true false fact, it'll report as a little green dot or no dot, that kind of thing. It's nice to see. So you can get your green dots just like you have your green check marks from Watchman. But I just need to spend the time to set it up in that way. Also, certain things are not necessarily built in, so you have to go to the community scripts to pull in, say, the Backblaze, backup scripts or other scripts that may be useful to report on, or in some cases, develop them yourself if or get them from the community through the Mac admin Slack. So it's not all just right there, ready to be, it's not a drop-in replacement per se, but I think I can get there. The counterpoint is just that it's not quite as fast for me to get the information from Addigy as it is from Watchman and Sam.
I have to add on to that, and
Okay.
Adam kind of pinged in the chat as well. So I feel like what we're saying, this is my observation from all of this, is yes, there is potential to use other tools like our MDMs, like Addigy, and fill in the blanks and scripted behavior potentially and create reports. But I still see a good value in consolidating a lot of that and having it being able to, like, I can export that data as CSV and have it similarly in one place. So for me, I kind of feel like both sides. Like, yes, I agree. We can do this in a few other places and tweak things and adjust things. And Joe, you've already mentioned that's a bit of an investment of time that we don't always have. Yeah. And for me right now, paying that amount, and I agree, it's an amount of money that you can take somewhere else, but I have it consolidated, organized, and reportable in one place. So I think my end result is I'm sticking with it.
Yeah,
I'm hanging.
For now, I'm right there with you. And I wanted to circle back, and Jerry, I know you want to jump in as well, but the reporting that I've been able to export from Watchman and put through a template in the Numbers app works really well for me. And that would be more development time to create a similar spreadsheet with conditional highlighting and sizing columns and blah, 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 to take the export from Addigy and, essentially report the same information. Because I literally will take that for a client of, 20 Macs or whatever they have, copy and paste that spreadsheet right from Numbers into the Mail app. And it actually formats it nicely. They look at it, they understand it, and it's useful to me. And so I would need to develop that in Addigy now, and I could, but it's like you said, Sam, it's just more time to invest. So yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm keeping it for now. It's, as Adam says in the chat, it's a pleasure to use for what it is, and it's hard to switch when you need to invest the time.
Well, it was a pleasure to use, and it had been a pleasure to use when it was the new shiny, and we had direct communication with the developer, and we saw things being added to it, and we saw a roadmap. Since the price has gone up, we don't really receive communication from the company that owns that, and we see that the program itself, it doesn't look like there's probably maintenance going on that I'm completely unaware of. But at the same time, we haven't seen any, it's like what, 10.6, no new features, right? We get, it's the only product that I'm paying more for that I'm getting no new features. Yeah. So for me, it was easy to let it go. I can appreciate people with a larger installed base liking the ease of use and at a glance, but it's not the tool that represented the revenue for me at one time, because as you pointed out, Joe, things have changed. Where the smart reports, when they did work, they would give us insight into something that was starting to go sideways for a client, and we could just take that money that we were paying for Addigy, for Watchman, and easily turn it into, a bankable amount of money. I'm not getting enough revenue off of this product. And what it's done for me, like I mentioned earlier in the show, is it's compelled me to be a little bit more adept at working within Addigy, and it's manageable for me. So nobody's asking for reports, and it's lost its value for me. It's lost its value.
Jerry, something you just said about focusing on the one tool, like it's causing you to basically invest more time in Addigy and learn Addigy better, and you get a lot out of that. You're consolidating into a platform. Yeah.
True. It would be nice, and I think we all have a lot of love for Addigy. It would be nice if I didn't have to go out to Backblaze to get the reports. If I am indeed using Malwarebytes, and maybe I need to glean a little information from those Malwarebytes endpoints to sort of do my sleuthing. So it would be nice to be able to get a little bit more effective reporting out of Addigy. So all these things I potentially can see happening with this product that's in development. They've got a roadmap. They're making improvements. They're getting better and better, as all MDM products are. I just see this other thing is maybe not moving at the same pace.
Oh, for sure, it's not. I mean, some of the development time they've invested has been to just maintain status quo. Like, Apple changed the way that the capacity is reported on the drive, for example. So, they had to like figure out a formula to, report an accurate number for the disk usage versus the capacity. I forget, there were a few others that happened along the way where something broke and they had to fix it based on, how Apple had changed things behind the scenes, or an individual developer changes like the way their plist reports the info, and then Watchman is parsing the plist to get the info, and they have to fix that. So some of the development has been just to keep that stuff working, but a lot of the quote unquote plugins, like the features of Watchman that it's reporting, have been very static for a long time, as we've been discussing. And Adam just brought up something interesting. We're giving Adam a lot of airtime here because he's making a lot of great points here, but coming up with more table views. So as I mentioned earlier, you can create these custom table views with different columns in the order you want, only the information that you want, which is great. And those are displays of the custom facts that you create or that come from the community, which is very very robust, or the built-in device facts that Addigy includes right out of the box. You can just say, okay, I want to put the machine name here, and then I want to have the Backblaze status here, and so on. So you can create these different table views, and it's, I think, really useful to have different views for different purposes. So you could have one where you're checking like, is this machine working? Like, is MDM working on this machine? That could be a view where you report things like, the MDM agent status and the type of enrollment and things like that you might want to refer to for just knowing if the machine is communicating properly on MDM. Most of the time, you don't need to see all that stuff. So you eliminate that, and now you display, again, disk capacity and space used and so on. But the thing that Adam's saying that I thought was really interesting is that you can use ChatGPT to get some of the like scripting stuff, for you. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say this about developing, writing code with the help of ChatGPT, and it sounds kind of magical. But I would love to know more about that, Adam. I'm sure we'll see you, chatting on the Addigy channel on Slack about this. But as we share these in the community, we can all benefit also. So if somebody creates a hey, drop-in replacement for one of the features of Watchman, we can all just scoop it up and put it in our table view, and there you go. We can kind of crowdsource some of this effort, I think.
Have either of you guys used ChatGPT to like create a script?
I have not.
It's kind of crazy. I mean, I don't use it a lot, but obviously I teach some classes, and I'm thinking like, oh, these guys are just going, because you can ask a question, be like, ChatGPT, just create a shell script that does X, Y, and Z. And it's like boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, sometimes it's a little inaccurate, but I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So to the points being brought up in the chat, it's scary good sometimes, and it's only getting better.
Wow. Yeah, it's wild. More to come on that, I'm sure. I think there's a lot of possibilities there.
Joe, do you want to share Benjamin Morales's comment
here?
Yep.
We just finished recording with Benjamin. It was a great conversation about just more of his business practice, but he's mentioning here more infrastructure than workstation stuff. But I love Prometheus and Grafana for visualization. We have Hoodoo Hoodoo dashboards for all of our workstations that present core workstation health and key links. So essentially, you can use these other tools for the visualization layer. I've thought about this with Addigy too. Like, one of my only sort of complaints is that, I mean, it has so much information, but it's just all in one kind of big list on the dashboard on the Go Live page. So it's there, and I can Command F, search for it. But if I could present that, to myself, basically, in a better way, like either using a style sheet or some other kind of display layer that would take that Addigy, info and display it to me in a way that, like, it's a very clear, green check if it's good or red X if it's not kind of situation. Or, if I could bubble up the information that I want to see at a glance to the top, like certain things are there already, like the serial number, for example, but maybe I want the uptime there, or the LAN IP address or something like that. So it would be nice to be able to do that within Addigy. But from what Ben is saying, these tools can be used for visualizing some of the stuff you get out of the software, like what Jerry would have wanted coming out of Watchman directly. You can kind of process through these other tools.
Nice.
You'll be
Very
back,
nice. Yeah, I don't think so, Sam. Yeah. It's I won't say it. The gift that keeps on giving, that was just sort of the direction I was heading in.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, good. Yeah, congratulations on making that transition, though. That's a big
I'm
step
buying
after...
beer tonight.
I get to it.
Yeah, I got Watchman money in my pocket.
Nice. Virtual happy hour.
Yeah.
What else do
you have for us, Jerry? Anything?
Yeah, I had an interesting thing happen to me with a 85-year-old client who kind of cold called me. And he said, "Oh, I should have called you a long time ago." And it's your typical story. But there is a discussion point here that I actually find pretty interesting. So he couldn't print with his printer, and he contacts he Googles Hewlett Packard. He gives somebody remote control of his computer. And he was gullible enough to write a check, fax them, and they scanned, and he faxed the check to them, and then he also sent them a picture of his license, and then he decides to pull the plug on his computer. I love these clients that when they're like, they've gone down the rabbit hole. I mean, you can't even see it. They're so far down the rabbit hole, and then they have this knee-jerk response. Like, at some point, it occurs to them, like, wait a minute, this sounds a little fishy.
Where's the line on that? That's what I want to know.
And exactly. And they walk to the wall and they pull the plug as if that dramatic show of, like, hey, you're not going to fool me. Right. Here I go. Like, somehow sort of undoes all these trials and these transgressions that they've already, given, them, they're signed over their will to these people. So, he does the same. So before he contacts me, he calls the bank. So he's smart, and he said, I think they're still in my computer. So we try to remote in. I said, well, the first thing I could do is I could remote in. He goes, no, I'd prefer you to come over. So I come over, I check, there's really nothing happening. I forget which VNC client they were using to get into his computer, but, I go to all the usual places where it would be, check everything. And I said, with 100% of surety, they're not in your computer anymore. So all you need to do now is follow through with your bank. He said, well, they were on my computer a long time. And I'm thinking, like, well, that's good job, Roscoe, And so I don't know. So then so it was a 2-hour visit. He pays me. I go back and I said, look, if you need to reach out to me again, feel free, won't charge you again. I think you're in good shape here. And he said, oh no, he calls me back a few hours later. He says, they're in my computer again. And he says, the mouse is just moving all over the place. And I don't understand. So I get him on the phone and I said, okay, remember that remote, that little circle with the cross? Cause we use Splashtop. I said, double click that. I can't. I don't know. I've lost control of the mouse. And I forget what the tip off was. I shared this with you, Joe.
Yeah, I think I heard this.
He said, he said, the mouse is, what he said, I can't click on the mouse. And I said, look at your mouse.
Yeah.
Do you have it oriented 180 degrees the wrong direction? And so he turns the mouse 180 degrees around. He's like, oh yeah, I could click now. So he lets me in and I'm like back in and I'm like, they're not on your computer. There's nothing happening here. in the meantime, he had already like locked himself out of his bank account because he must have been on the phone with them and told them like, oh, I can't control my computer. This is after I left, right? And fixed everything, right? So he's satisfied that they're not on his computer. We end the conversation. And now I'm on the treadmill. It's towards the end of my day. I'm doing some running. He calls me again. I stop the treadmill and I'm like, yeah, what's up? And he said, I just spoke to, this is a local bank in Connecticut. They're called Liberty Bank, and they want to have you write a message stating that there's nobody on my computer. And he says, because they won't let me back into my account. And I'm thinking to myself, like, well, maybe that's probably a good thing because you are your own worst enemy at this point. Right. And so I told him, I said, no, I can't do that for you. Under no uncertain terms am I going to write a letter to the bank assuring, guaranteeing that you're going to operate your computer in a way that it won't get compromised again, or that there's nobody on your computer now. I told him, I think I used my old standby line, like, I'm not insured for that, I said, I deal with lots of companies. I deal with medical offices. I deal with, all kinds of doctors' offices, schools. I said, nobody during the whole time that I've ever been doing this has ever asked me, no bank has asked me to certify that your computer is completely free of malware. And I can tell you with 100% certainty, I would do that under other cases. But I told him, and I want to hear your comments, but in final summation, I said, look, if they're not going to allow you back in your internet account, you need to find another bank because they are just passing the buck onto somebody else because they don't want to take responsibility if your account gets compromised. So they say, if we have this letter of, what do they call it in the insurance business? Subrogation. So they're going to say, well, we've got this letter from your tech guy who says your computer was fine. What do you mean you lost $10,000? Right. And so I said, I'm completely out. And I at that point, I was ready to give him back. I forget what it was, like $600 or whatever. It was a lot of money.
You got paid, but good job. All right.
Oh, thank you, Sam. There he goes. The zingers. But you know how that goes, where somebody pushes back hard and they're creating such a stink that you just want to wash your hands of the situation and say, look, here's your money back. I didn't say that. He said, no, I completely understand, which I was shocked, He said, he said, I was surprised that they asked me for that too. So
I'm not sure what that would do. I mean, what format, do they want it notarized? Like, it's not like they're going to take this letter, this PDF or whatever format it's in, and the bank is going to call you up if there's a court case. I mean, that's what I would be concerned about. That's why I wouldn't want to sign it either. But like anybody, the client could have just signed on your behalf. I mean, he could there's no, who's checking this stuff? Like, I'm not really sure that letter would really cover the bank in the way, it almost just seems like they're just kind of putting him off a little bit and like, come back to me next week kind of thing.
Or looking for a scapegoat if it happens a second time.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
This company said it was clean, to sue them.
Somebody to blame, but like but again, this letter would, is this going to hold up in court that like you signed this letter? It could be like, I didn't sign that. I don't know where you got that letter. If it's just,
right.
I don't know. It doesn't seem that legally like foolproof.
Yeah. I wonder what your attorney would say in a situation like that too. Like you could say like, as of this date and time, when I left the computer, it was, clean, but I wonder, like you said, Joe, like what's the, I don't know. I don't say that's why they're insured. Like go through the bank. Yeah. I suppose they maybe it was a small bank or something like that. They just didn't want to get hit a second time. Who knows?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if it was for a regular client, but not somebody who, this is my first tango with this guy, and I'm not going to do that. I'll give you your money back, and we'll call it a day. How about we do that?
I would say the same thing, but I wouldn't give them the money back necessarily. I mean,
well,
I just think I don't know why.
I heard no charge for another visit, and then I'll give you your money back. What's going on here, Jerry?
Right. This is have you learned nothing from the last public show? No, but but like for that kind of thing, it's a really interesting conversation, I think, because I had this come up with a client last week where they're a relatively new client. We worked with them once on some small things, and they were coming in saying, I think I'm a target, and there's a reason to believe that they might be a target. And I think, these things are compromised. I had this gaming PC on the network and it wasn't like really secured and somebody got in there and blah, blah, blah. So there's reasons to think that what he's saying
Take a drink, folks.
Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. What he's saying is actually valid. And I was saying to him, I try to find a way to walk this line a little bit and say, we're not forensic security specialists. Like I throw the word forensic in there. I don't even know if I'm using it correctly, right? But just like, we're not forensic security. Like I'm not the guy that's going to come in and, analyze the system and be able to give you a clean bill of health and say that this system is free of whatever the bigger concerns are. I don't, I said, especially not for a new client, that's kind of a distinction also, because for an existing client, maybe you have maybe proactively you have security, measures in place, let's say, and maybe you're able to do that a little bit more. But I tell almost every client that it's very hard to be able to give you a clean bill of health. Like once you have had something compromise your system, I don't know the extent of the damage. I don't know if there's some kind of quote rootkit, that can get in there at a lower level than I'm able to deal with. I'm pretty sure that's not a concern on the Mac for the most part, especially these days. But it's very hard to give somebody a clean bill of health and to prove a negative. Like I know there isn't a problem here. What I can do is positively document like what I have done. So what I have often told clients where they've said, can you write this up for like, a case like this, like a bank or whatever? What I can do is I just document what the work is that we did on the invoice that you're going to receive anyway. And you can do that with that, what you will. So if you want to supply to the bank that you went through and, you had this person at this company do X, Y, and Z, hopefully that's good enough for them. Because again, I can't claim that, there is no problem here. What I can say is we ran a scan using malware bytes and there was no malware found. We checked the following locations and there were no suspicious, background processes installed, this and that. But we can't say I guarantee there's no issue with the system. Like I just can't do that. So that's the distinction I make in those cases.
I like what you just said there. I think your work and your documentation sets the standard, and you're not setting a guarantee. There are no guarantees in technology anyway, for the most part. Anyway. So like you're showing what work was done. And that should be beneficial to just place in the file. Be like, they tried to get it fixed, and if something happens from there, it's user error. They let someone in again. Right. Before they unplug the cable from the wall. So that's that.
Yeah. Like I said, in your case, Joe, it was a client that represents ongoing revenue for you. By the way, if you're listening to this show and you get a call like this, where somebody thinks there's somebody's infiltrated their computer, and the double red flag is when they go, and we went to the Apple Store, and the Apple Store said there was nothing on there. And I went back home and it's back on my computer. It's like, no, I'm sorry. We're not insured for that. That's
we're not insured for that. That's a good line.
Stay away.
We're not.
Yeah.
We don't do crazy.
Yeah.
I did have that. Well, I talked about this on an earlier show, but I'll make it quick. But I had that exact same issue. Someone's like, my mouse not working. This was years ago, even before the pandemic. And eventually they brought it in and they're like, it worked at the Apple Store. And I'm like, that's weird. So
I think I guessed this one when this came up. I remember this one. Yeah.
What was the issue?
The issue was there was a wireless mouse that was under some papers or something, and it was pressing the button down, right?
Oh, that was a different issue.
Maybe a different one. Okay.
This one was the mouse wasn't working. Like they couldn't get it to
couldn't
move.
even move it. Okay.
And this one was because when they went back home, they had just gotten a glass desk.
Okay.
So it just wasn't working.
Right.
And at the store, it was, of course, working. But yeah.
Well, next time they go to the store, you got to tell them, bring the desk, bring the whole environment. You got to bring everything. It's like, but I've had that happen with dust in the bottom of the Magic Mouse, where somebody says, oh, it's not that it's not moving, but that it's moving. I'm not moving it. And it's like a very subtle movement. Yeah. And it was actually, it's like dust in the sensor. So it's just sitting there and it's light is shining in and getting it, whatever, and it's like moving slightly. So
what about, didn't you have a keyboard issue, Joe?
oh yeah, just today. So today I take my Magic Keyboard and I turn it off and I walk into the room, I grab a microfiber thing, I'm cleaning it, and I come back to my desk, I'm hearing boop, bop, boom, bop, and it's like, and then it's like 5 different searches are open in the Finder. I'm like, oh man, like what did I delete or click or send and I'm still probably going to find out that something, like I messaged somebody something I heard, gibberish or something. But like all this stuff was happening on my screen because even though I switched it off, the green little thing on the back right edge of the Magic Keyboard with the Touch ID built in was switched off. Guarantee that it was not switched on, like I know for sure. It was still connected wirelessly somehow. And I went back to my desk. I'm like, this is crazy. I switched it on, I switched it off. It's not going off. So I'm testing it. I switch it on, I'm typing. Okay. I switch it off, I'm typing. It's all still working. Very weird issue. 2 hours later, I'm on a client remote session, and I see the thing that says keyboard off. And I thought it was on their screen. It was on my screen because I was connected remotely. It was on my screen. My keyboard finally turned off after 2 hours. I've never seen that before. I thought this was a physical switch on the back of the keyboard, but apparently it's like a soft switch that just tells the keyboard to disconnect or turn off. It's very weird. So
when it went off when you were typing, like was the switch off when you you were still working on it?
Yeah, exactly. I must have left it off for 2 hours because I went back and I'm like, after it turned off, I'm like, oh, it's my keyboard that's off because it had stopped working. And I look and it's off. Like I had left it off for 2 hours and it finally turned off. It's very weird. Yeah.
And look at that. Adam
just
star of the
validated
show today, by
problem.
the way.
Yeah. Star of the show, Adam. Exactly. Adam Rice says, I just retired a keyboard that wouldn't switch off with the switch. Had never seen that before. I wonder if it's a bug in firmware, one of these firmware updates that comes out, it silently installs or whatever. But yeah, that's an interesting one. If a client said that, I would have said, yeah, sure, buddy. Okay.
I was going to ask Jerry that exact question. Jerry, if you got a call like that, what would you say?
Right.
We're not insured for this.
Yeah, we're not insured. That's right. That's good. Oh, man. If anybody ever used that line on me, I'd have to really question myself. Do I sound as crazy as this person thinks I sound, Oh,
so just an update. If you're following the show on a weekly basis, I had mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I did little Instagram, Facebook marketing just to see if that could generate any traction or move the needle for new business. And after 2.5 weeks, I shut it off.
Wow.
Because there was nothing. My wife said run it for a month. I said no, I'm not going to do
You're
that.
done.
So, well, I could turn it back on, but it didn't seem to do anything at all. I got a couple more people to look at my Facebook page and to like a couple of posts, but likes are cheap.
Yeah, it takes time to build that too. Like that's time and money to build that,
Right.
Right. But to what end? I mean, I don't know. We have to quantify it in a little different way because we're not selling T-shirts with our ads or whatever. We're selling billable services. But ultimately, 2.5 weeks, I figure that's enough time to say like, oh, I saw you on the internet or something. I would have asked, where did you see us on the internet?
Right.
So, my, to just put in a plug for Tidbits Content Network, every month dutifully, I faithfully post and it cross posts to Facebook, and that makes it, easy. So, my Facebook page is definitely a live thing. It's not like something for you go there and you find it from 2018. So,
right.
How much work we actually will get from Facebook, or how much work do we want from Facebook or Instagram? But, for the amount of money, it wasn't a lot of money. I think I budgeted $50 a week. So I think I spent like $120 by the time I turned it off. So just if you're following along at home.
Interesting. Yeah. No, thanks for that update. I'm always curious about what works and what doesn't work. And for me, the clients that have found me through Google, they're like, oh, I just searched. I don't know. I found you on Google. They are usually not they're not always the right fit, you know, for
That's
long
right.
term. Let's just put it that way. I'll just say I'm not insured for that, and move on. So, but you know, I mean, and sometimes it's exactly what we do. It's like, you know, hey, I have this new Mac. I want to migrate from these other 2 machines, and I want to set up a network at home. And it's like we go in and we do that work, and then they're like, wow, you know, I don't like about blah blah blah. I'll pay you half, you know. And it's like, what are you talking about? You pay me like you don't get to tell me what you're going to pay me. Like, who thinks like that? And it's these clients that come from these random sources. No,
Was his name Bob by any chance?
I don't even remember that guy's name. I can look it up. Yeah, Bob, best Bob, right?
The worst Bob.
But like the idea of the warm referral from an existing client, you know, where they're like, you know, hey, I think you'd like my friend Jane, you know, and she really needs the same stuff I do, because they're talking to each other. Oh yeah, you know, oh, why does this never send, or why isn't this working? And the other person's like, oh, what, you should call, you know, Cymac. They're going to take care of all that stuff. Oh, cool. What's their name? You know, that's a lot more meaningful. They're filtering that stuff coming in. And the fact that they know each other, in my experience, means that, you know, they don't want to like screw you over because you know their friend and you're going to, you know, talk about that, or they're going to, you know, there's something about that warm referral that is just such a higher value. So I wonder if in your case, Jerry, you could say, you know, refer us to a friend and we'll give you a free hour on your account, you know, or it's like that, you know, cheaper than this online stuff, right?
I've been down that highway.
Yeah.
So I was giving away Amazon gift certificates if they wanted them, but I couldn't even get anybody to. I just, first of all, I need people to restart their machine for starters, jobs. I say that every week.
Yeah. Well, Addigy can do that too. My new Command Control Power restart script is out in the Addigy community. Speaking of Addigy, and you know, it takes a little bit of implementation, but when you get it working, it's going to pop up a message and tell them to restart. If you want, you can have it restart forcefully, so that's also an option too. But yeah,
you can have a login item that says, you know, refer a friend, win an Amazon gift card every time they turn on their computer.
Yeah. You guys are idea guys.
How about I'm an idea. I mean,
not good one.
How about
the
disk space remediation? Your disk space is low. Refer a friend and I'll fix it for free. You know, there's the remediation. Just pops up on screen. Yeah, it's perfect. Love it. Let's do it. Yeah. We could go another hour on ideas alone. This is great. Yeah. Generate
no, I'm
business.
all out. I'm all out. I'm on
say you're spent. Oh, this has been fun. Yeah. Anything
I think it's mac and cheese time for Sam.
Yeah, definitely. We're on the dot here.
The family.
All right. Well, another great episode of Command Control Power. Thanks everybody for listening and supporting the show. And as mentioned, you can find out more on Patreon. We do a lot more episodes there of the behind the scenes, talking about how we can help Jerry, you know, find more clients, charge his clients for what he's worth, as opposed to giving them away everything for free. And, you know, all of this stuff, and we get a little bit more clear about numbers and things like that on the Patreon show. So if you're interested, check us out there at commandcontrolpower.com and click on support. We really appreciate.
And how about those great people in the chat? How do I participate in this chat if I wanted to?
That's also a benefit of Patreon. So you can watch us and listen to us record live. You can participate. You'll get a shout out when you you know, post something like that. And yeah, we'd love to see you there. It's really encouraging also to see people.
Would it be like Adam and Benjamin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's not forget Guillaume. He was
Guillaume, yeah.
I saw him a couple weeks ago live and in person. So good to see everyone in the chat.
He's glad you made it back safely, Sam, as you mentioned earlier, Guillaume. And that's great. And and we hope you're feeling better. And Sam, it sounds like you dodged a bullet there with the illness. So you're past the point, right?
I'm good.
Awesome. Excellent. Good to hear. All right, fireworks all around. Next week will be live. If we get a few more patrons, then we'll do live pyrotechnics. Is that a promise, Jerry, on your side?
I couldn't promise anything less, Joe.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.